How's it going, everyone? I'm Keegs, and today I'm here with Ben. Say hi, Ben.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about something that is not our usual Star Wars talk, but in fact, we are going to be talking Godzilla today, and specifically Godzilla -1, the new Japanese movie that came out recently, because it was just awesome. And this is going to be all spoiler related, so if you want to know our opinions on it, our opinions are that it's awesome. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, exactly that.
So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we're just going to jump straight into spoilers. So kick us off, Ben. What was this movie about?
So this takes place at the end of World War II. Our protagonist, we start with him on Odo Island. So we sort of just about the journey that this character takes from some not so great things he's told, sort of the consequences of the Japanese and US government's, I want to say negligence / apathy towards the Japanese citizens.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense at the time. It was a tenuous relationship that we had with the Japanese people.
Yeah, just a little bit. And yeah, so it kind of goes from there, follows the journey, and that of course leads into Godzilla shenanigans and some really interesting life lessons and a very obviously the movie's fictional, but a more nuanced look at history. Not like beating you over the head with it or anything, but just very like sheds a more complicated light on the immediate aftermath and the consequences for the people. And I found that really, really interesting.
Yeah, it definitely told it from, I feel like, the Japanese perspective, and specifically from the perspective of a kamikaze pilot that did not go through with his mission, and just how much that was just kind of a disgrace at the time. You know, everybody viewed him as someone that just is the reason they lost the war, because of people like him.
Yeah, and that was really like, before we like kind of go into kind of chronologically, something I was really worried about was that, so I had heard that originally that the creator of the movie was very like not nationalist Japanese, but I guess very patriotic, is what I had heard in his take on the history. So I was concerned that when I saw the message in the movie about the kamikaze pilot thing, that the big ending was going to be that he does sacrifice himself. And of course, like as it goes on, you realize that's not what the message is going to be.
Yeah,
but
that's not what it's about at all, actually. And I definitely got the sense that he was, proud of his country and everything. I think that shined through without it being such a negative messaging, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of shows that, a country is more than its government, it's its people too.
And I think that was very evident just by the end, not to jump all the way to the end, but because the government, he even said, in the movie, they're like, the government's useless, they're not going to do anything, they're just going to try to sweep this all under the rug. So it's up to the citizens and the people of Japan, which is the country,
Yeah. It's sort of, you kind of see that, and you can kind of look at a lot of world governments and how, I think people like to hold the people that live in countries responsible for what their government does. But I think this did happen a long time ago.
Yeah.
You can sort of look at this and see that, like,
80 years ago now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
The interests of the government, interests of the people in it aren't always aligning, just because
true to this day.
And just because you live somewhere doesn't mean you agree with what your government's doing or vice versa. And
yeah.
Anyway, so I thought that whole approach was really interesting. And
I really was not, I really just went in to kind of a traditional Godzilla mindset where you're just going in to watch a cool monster movie. But I really felt that this was a great personal dramatic piece with an awesome mix of Godzilla in there too, to like really enhance the story that they were trying to tell,
Yeah. It felt like a actual story and vision that they had in mind. And I don't think there is anything wrong with monster movies. I don't think they're...
Oh, no, either. I went in for that because I like those kind of movies too.
Yeah, and I don't think they're less than. I think that like media being sort of more or less thought-provoking or not doesn't necessarily make something better or not better. It's different, and it can be, but I think here I really appreciated that, and I think maybe without realizing it unlocked the key to good human characters in these sorts of films.
Yeah, and I think that's a problem sometimes with monster movies, is where you don't really care about the humans in a lot of monster movies. You're just waiting for the monsters to be on screen because that's what you're there for. But it makes it so much more impactful when you actually do care about the people that are involved. And it really, to me, it does a great job of scaling the monsters. Like, they feel like a threat every time they're on screen. It's not just like, oh, look at this dude walking through Lego buildings or whatever. It's like, these are real people and you care about them. You don't want them to die, which makes the monsters even cooler.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The violence felt like visceral, I want to say. So Godzilla is often depicted as like a natural disaster, and he's sort of like that here, but he also
yeah, he's mean here. This is a mean Godzilla.
The maybe not like with the people itself, but the destruction he's causing seems like on purpose. Whereas
he's
Godzilla,
intentionally going after people, I think.
Even if not that, he's definitely like destroying area where people live on purpose. And whereas, you know, like in the American ones recently, and I like those, but Godzilla is sort of like apathetic towards people rather than like antagonistic, and this Godzilla here seems to like hate people, not anyone specifically, but just broadly. And I think there are hints to that beyond just I don't think this Godzilla is necessarily naturally malevolent, but he becomes malevolent.
He's definitely not a nice Godzilla, that's for sure. He's not there to protect the people by any means. No,
and I would even say the American one is there to protect the people anyway. He just sort of like by extension protects them because he has to deal with something else.
You know what's something funny that my dad pointed out to me, and I didn't really notice it, but he was like, well, this Godzilla, maybe he isn't so mean, but he didn't actually start attacking anyone until he was attacked first in every scene pretty much. I don't think there was a single scene that he attacked first. And I went back and thought about it, and I was like, oh shit, you're totally right. Like, I can't think of a scene where he actually started something first.
Do you want to like kind of go to the first act?
The first act when they're on the island. What's it called? Do you know? I can't remember what the island's name is, but
Odo Island. Yeah.
Odo Island, and then small T-Rex sized Godzilla shows up.
Small. I think he's a little bit bigger than a T-Rex, but he's definitely not like full size.
No, I mean he's at least 3 times the size when he shows up 3 years later or whatever in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Like.
He's a good like 50 feet tall, which is pretty still pretty big, but like it's interesting because I thought that version might have been the scariest in certain ways. Because he was big, but small enough that like he could look directly at you.
Yeah, it definitely was scary, and it was really interesting because our main protagonist gets in the airplane to try to kill him on the direction of some of the other crew members out there, the mechanics, and he doesn't end up going through with it because he just freaks out. And let's be honest, like, I don't know that you could have done that either. That it was a very scary situation, and it 100% would not have killed Godzilla. So
no,
I just pissed him off.
Yeah, exactly. And I read comments saying, oh, like kind of like asking like, oh, would that have killed him? I really think like that maybe it would have. And I'm like, no, I really think the whole point, a big part of the movie is the fact that it would not have killed him, that he was not wrong to be a coward. That's like, that was the whole, and he wasn't a coward. He had like the correct fear response to the situation. He was sort of forced into situations where his body was screaming at him, basically, he has fight or flight to not do this. And he didn't, which is good. I don't think that the guns would have killed him. I think he would have just got himself killed. Yeah, that's absolutely what would happen. I mean, we saw when obviously bigger Godzilla, when they're in the water, like he can regenerate. So it's with that in mind, knowing that in hindsight, I don't think there's any way any guns are going to really take him out. No, I don't think so either. Someone mentioned like he got chip damage from the guns they were firing, but I don't even remember seeing that because I looked at the close-ups of his face that you get, and maybe it's the quality of the images since the movie's still in theaters, but I didn't feel like he sustained any damage. He just seems sort of irritated.
Agreed. I thought he seemed just pretty irritated. Yeah.
I imagine the bullets to that size Godzilla is more like you getting hit with like a BB gun or something.
Yeah,
it hurt, but it's not gonna like kill you.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I feel like the same way. That's probably the scale. But anyway, that Godzilla just wrecks everybody on the island. He wakes up because he gets knocked out, and one other mechanic survivor wakes up as well, who's again pissed at him for he feels like once again he failed his country and did not, he was a coward, so he couldn't go through with it. So he's pissed off, and then they get in the boat and he gives him an envelope of something that we don't know what it is at the beginning, but he looks at it and he just puts it away. I thought it was money at first. Was it money?
I thought it was money, but it might have just been photos of like the dead soldiers.
Well, that's what it was. That's what it was revealed like at the end when he opened it up and showed his pseudo girlfriend. I swear to God, there was money in there too. Can't remember though. Someone in the comments let us know if there was money in that envelope or if it was just the pictures. Something
I want to touch on before we move on from this sort of opening act here is that this is something I felt watching it, but I guess there's some discussion online about this. The novelization of the film makes it clear that Godzilla sort of had like a symbiotic relationship with the people on Odo Island. So this Godzilla isn't necessarily actively antagonistic, and it also feeds into what your dad had said when you guys watched the movie, was that he didn't really attack people until he got attacked first. And I think that is true. It's true on Odo Island when we see him, because he's just there.
Yeah.
And then they start shooting because they're scared. And then when we get to it, something else happens. It sort of like instigates the rest of the broader conflict. But yeah, I thought that was really fascinating. The tension in that scene is crazy. I was like, I remember sitting in the theater just staring at it, and like, you know, when a movie's like really good and really capturing you, you're just sort of transfixed on it, and like you're not really like you almost forget to breathe sometimes. It was kind of like that. Like it was just so good. Yeah.
And in the similar sense, because obviously you and I don't speak Japanese, we watched it in subtitles, but those faded away for me so quickly. You know, like I didn't even notice them pretty quickly into the movie because I was so fixed on exactly what was happening.
Yeah, same. And something I really liked and was actually really happy to see a positive response to is that this film was like super earnest.
How
the
so?
Emotions were what they were. I didn't feel like it tried to be too smart or too subtle. Like the characters showed their emotions and they were not subtle about them. Like
for sure.
Tears and screaming and freaking out, and it's like a human reaction we often don't get to see, I think, in modern films, especially for male characters, but where it's really earnest. It's not trying to like make the emotion cool. It's not trying to like frame the emotion in this like overly dramatic way. It's just the characters being emotional.
Yeah,
and I really
like kind of raw, just innate human emotion.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's something it's something I like, and I enjoy that the audience seems to have appreciated it and not been like, oh, that's cringe or whatever. I don't know. I like when movies and art broadly kind of wears its heart on its sleeve, and I think we're afraid of showing our feelings a lot of the time. I find that sort of exhausting. So anyway, I'm glad that this movie didn't do that.
No, it definitely did. I thought it did a great job with that. So anyway, moving on, then he gets back to Tokyo, and it's just been completely devastated by actually it was the air raids in this. It wasn't even the nukes, right? So this was just the air raids that had destroyed the entire city. So he meets his neighbor, who also might be family. I was unclear on whether or not she was actually family, like his aunt or something, or if she was just a family
neighbor.
Friend. Because they end up calling her auntie, but I'm like, oh, well, I mean, maybe that's just what they tell the little girl because it's someone who takes care of her a lot.
Yeah, I think it's the latter, like you just said. I don't think that
they're actually family.
Yeah, this movie has so many like little themes. I don't necessarily think all of them were like the big focus, but like the whole found family thing I thought was done really, really well.
Yeah, I think the found family was kind of the big driving force of this movie, though, is that he falls in with this woman and this child, and neither, like, no one's related to anyone here, right? The mother of this child is not the actual mother. Someone just gave her this baby and said protect it, and she's gonna do that, and then she weasels her way into his house, and at first he doesn't want her there at all. I think he doesn't feel like a good or deserving person, so he doesn't really feel like he would be a good fit, but in actuality they end up becoming this pseudo family.
Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed that. I like that it's sort of a big part of the movie is about people banding together in earnest after a tragic event and then another tragic event immediately later.
Yeah, and which is funny. I learned recently that that's where the name -1 comes from, is because they felt like after the nukes went off and they lost the war that they were at ground zero, and now another monster shows up to devastate Tokyo, which is going to bring them to a net -1. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know where that came from after I saw the movie. I was like, I didn't get the title, but after someone explained it to me, I did. I get that. It makes a lot of sense to me now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good explanation. It's really sad too.
Yeah, it is really sad. I'm sure everybody was feeling hopeless, and then like imagine being completely hopeless, like marginally trying to rebuild your society, and then this just giant monster comes and wrecks everything again. Like,
yeah,
get fucked.
And it's so interesting with the way that the government is handled. They're not like explicitly portrayed as like antagonistic, but sort of not helpful.
Yeah.
I like that we kind of got this approach in the movie, and it's not like a huge point. Like they don't like belabor it a lot. It's sort of a catalyst for the citizens to get together. But I really enjoyed kind of getting this fantasy film that has this more realistic look at history instead of this very like
no, I thought that was awesome too. I love the way that they portrayed this history and everything. But anyway, so then they're this little family, and we have like a small time jump. I think it's like 2 or 3 years, and the child has grown up a little bit, and they're really struggling for money. So our protagonist ends up joining a ship crew that's going to search out mines that were left from World War II and trying to get rid of them all. And what I loved about this mostly was I loved the supporting cast on the boat. I thought all of them were just amazing, right? They were fantastic.
Love them so much. And I was like, I don't want any of them to die. They're all great.
I thought for sure one of them was dying before the end of the movie. I was really tense the whole time because every time they're on screen and you see like Godzilla showed up when they were out looking at one of the wrecked ships, and you're like, oh my God, this is just so heart pounding.
Oh my God. The Godzilla was like, first of all, the VFX on Godzilla were crazy. Like,
oh my, yeah,
so good. I don't know if like the rumors about what the budget was is true or whatever, but
$15 million.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that, but either it honestly doesn't matter. It just looks so good.
Yeah, and I think that's like a topic of conversation because I've heard that too, and that's what they're claiming was the budget of this movie was $15 million, and then usually you double the budget for marketing and such purposes. But I don't even know if they spent that much on marketing. This movie wasn't marketed hardly at all, at least in the U.S. But
yeah, all I've seen is like social media posts. I haven't seen like anything aggressive.
I know. So I know a big part of that is the unfortunate work culture of Japan, and I know a lot of their VFX people and cast and crew and stuff are a little bit overworked and underpaid, so I think that has something to do with it. But I mean, even if you triple that budget, this looked better than a lot of $200 million plus movies from Hollywood. Yeah, right. Like,
I think that speaks to good producers and good studios, at least in terms of how they're allocating money. Because I think a big problem. I'm not one of those people that thinks that the Marvel movies recently look bad or any of the like big blockbuster movies. I don't think that they look bad.
Not all of them. Like, there's a couple here or there that it's questionable. I don't know if you saw Ant-Man Quantumania, but there was some questionable CGI in that movie.
Yeah, for sure. And I think people think that it's not that American VFX artists aren't talented. It's that probably the resources were allocated poorly, the scope of the movie.
I think another big part of it is the actors that get paid. They get paid ridiculous amounts of money, whereas as far as I know, not many of the actors in this Godzilla movie were very well-known actors or like super popular in Japan. They're relatively on the lower side of popularity. I mean, I'll probably after this movie they'll be more popular, but they were fairly unknown.
Yeah, because to my understanding,
that could just be because I don't watch enough Japanese film though.
No, but I think it's a very like American thing to like overpay your celebrities by significant amounts, especially actors.
Yeah.
Like I don't really think an actor needs. Anyway, we don't need to get into that. But I guess back to Godzilla, he did look really, really good in the film, and I was really impressed with that. I think a little bit to tie back into the budget conversation. I think part of the reason they were able to achieve that was because a lot of the film, I think, was they didn't need a super extensive VFX. I don't think. I've seen some of the behind the scenes, and it's a lot of like green screen, a lot of like practical, because it's mostly like a destroyed city out on a boat.
Yeah.
You know, like
the sets are like kind of small. They feel big because of I don't know the scale of a lot of things, but the sets themselves are actually usually pretty small if you think about it. Like it takes place on a very tiny boat or in a very tiny house or in a very tiny room, even though it's, you know, this huge world and it feels very lived in and real.
Yeah. So I think it was just really, really smart framing. This film, I think, was very largely traditionally shot, like in the cinematography. Notice like there aren't like tons of fancy camera angles or anything like that. Something I've grown to appreciate. I don't think this is something you get as you get older, but just something I've grown to appreciate as I've gotten older is that I do like fancy shots and like creative camera angles and, you know, dynamicism in movies and stuff. But I really like when shots are sort of done with a purpose. Like they chose this angle for a reason. either for the theme or for specific emotion it's trying to convey, or the way the story is told. It's not just dynamic for the sake of, keeping your brain engaged. So I really like that, and I felt like that movie was sort of shot with that in mind. There's a lot of just standard dialogue scenes that are just the setting and the actors just sell it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really done really well, and that's probably how they were able to save some on the budget too.
And then we get in the water there, when they're out there, we get the first look, I believe, of his atomic breath.
Well, so even before that, a little bit before that, there's like a 30-second scene where they show Bikini Atoll.
You're right.
Dropping the nuke on Godzilla.
Yeah. Yep.
And you see his like face incinerate away, and I guess obviously he regenerates. Now my question is, I've seen both takes online. Do you think that he was already like had these regeneration abilities / something to do with nuclear power already before the bomb got dropped on him, or do you think the bomb gave him those powers? The impression that I got was that he already was like that.
Yes, definitely. I think he was already like that. I don't know a lot of the background. We don't have a lot of the background, I guess, but I think that he has existed for forever at this point, since, the dinosaur age. But if you notice, he was very small, and then the nukes dropped and he just exponentially grew. So I feel like the nukes just like supercharged him. He woke up and everything, and then he's starting to grow really big, because I feel like the nukes are what just like amplified his powers. I feel like he was pretty much at max size or something maybe for all these millions of years, but when the nukes went off, now all of a sudden he's got this supercharged power, and he grows to a massive scale and just amplifies all of his abilities. I think so too. But the way that I see it is not so much that the nuke like gave him those powers directly, or amplified him directly. It was more his body's natural, whatever the regeneration abilities, his biology's response to that sort of like significant trauma of like getting hit by a nuclear bomb. Sure.
So he sort of, I don't know if there's necessarily any basis for this in the movie, but the way that I think is cool is that it's like his response. So it's like a hyper, like immediate evolution type of thing, where his body's responding to the environmental pressures, in this case, the nuclear bomb. So in order to sustain that and deal with that in the future, he has to get even bigger, stronger, more resilient, that kind of thing. And though I do think that his atomic breath is probably from the bomb. He like assimilated it. I don't know.
I definitely think it's nuclear related energy, because then they have like the Geiger counters and things after he does his blast and things, and you can tell that it's very clearly irradiated. So
yeah,
definitely...
well, he was pulling up the fish on Odo Island before that too.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he's a big enough animal on his own to have just, unless he's bringing up the fish for the islanders, because like the novelization specified that they had a symbiotic relationship and they weren't like antagonistic.
Yeah, I'm not sure you want to eat irradiated fish though.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is I don't know if he just brought them up with him like
I feel
naturally.
Like I think it was just probably a natural occurrence, because he has some level of radiation with him. And that's why like when he's huge, all of a sudden at the end of the movie or whatever, or even, a little before that, but our protagonist goes to the ocean and he sees all these dead fish, or when he's in the ocean, he sees way more dead fish than when he saw on Odo Island. And he's like, oh crap, this thing must be huge now, because look how many more fish there are than the last time this happened.
Absolutely. But yeah, you were saying about, so that's the first time we see it is on the boat?
I believe so. So the first time we see it, and it's like, not like the full experience, right? You just see the ocean light up, and then just the ship, the big battleship, just explodes.
That's right. And he starts wrecking them.
And then they start going away as fast as they can. That was insane, though. When I saw that, in the theaters, I was like, holy shit. As soon as that, he blew up that ship from above, and then he started chasing him down or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about it, because it is like Godzilla action / destruction, but something about it, I don't know if it was the sound effects or the sound team or just the fact that Godzilla looks really mean, but like the violence of it, even like the ships being torn apart and broken felt so violent. I guess because you saw Godzilla like tearing into it.
Yeah, it felt very primal. Like he felt like a primal animal that is just like ripping and tearing and clawing and just trying to cause destruction to whatever he's currently facing.
Yeah, the way I see it, it's like, if you're in a cage with a lion and someone from outside shoots the lion's probably going to attack you if it doesn't die, not the person who shot it, because you're the closest thing.
Yeah,
that's kind of the way that I see it. It's not like Japan created Godzilla, but or at least
they started attacking it.
Bigger, but started attacking it because it's the closest landmass.
Yeah. And the Americans or whatever couldn't go there because of the Soviet tensions and everything, which I thought was
I love how they were like, yeah, there's this giant monster that's coming towards you, and there's something we can do about it, so good luck with that. And even the Japanese government's like, we're not going to do anything about that either. And it's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I feel like everyone, especially the head of governments, kind of underestimated a little bit of the power and capabilities of this monster that's coming for them.
Yeah, I mean, I we don't know how much the Japanese government knew, if they knew like it got a nuke dropped on it and nothing happened, or it got worse.
Yeah, exactly. That just made it worse.
Yeah. Also, I suspect that Godzilla was already. So I don't know. It's not made clear if the U.S. government was purposefully like dropped the bomb on Godzilla specifically to try to kill Godzilla, or if Godzilla just happened to be there. I gander they tried to kill it, but that's usually like the context driven for like whenever Bikini Atoll is brought up in Godzilla fiction, is that they're trying to kill Godzilla specifically.
Maybe we'll find out in the sequel.
Yeah. Anyway.
But so they're on the boat. Just quickly, that chase scene where Godzilla is chasing them and they cut the bomb, it floats up and they shoot it and it blows his face up, and then it just like immediately regenerates.
Yeah,
that
was insane. He's sort of like weak from like he has like the fleshy bits inside, so you can kind of blow it up from there, but he just regenerates anyway.
Yeah, and he regenerated so fast. I'm like, that's terrifying. As in the movie, I was like, how the hell are they going to compete with this thing if it can regenerate at that rate?
Yeah, they do come up with a really, really interesting method. But that whole scene of them chasing it was really scary. And basically only saved, I think, because the other battleship showed up.
Yeah,
Godzilla
absolutely.
Deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. The reason why they're out there dealing with the magnetic mines, you kind of learn to love all these characters. And then,
yeah. So
Godzilla
anyway, they escape. They go back to land or whatever, and I think they go to the city next, right? His girlfriend is going to the city.
Yeah,
for her
I don't remember
new job.
Jin something. I don't remember the exact name.
Should look
of
up her name.
I don't remember the name of the city. Anyway, yeah, she does go.
Noriko. That's her name.
She kind of sees that. He either doesn't have feelings for her, or which we know he does,
obviously,
or isn't capable given his trauma. And they have. I don't know if that scene. The scene was before that, where he has this nightmare and he thinks maybe his life isn't real because he must have died because how horrible everything is.
Yeah, which just goes to touch on the awesome personalization and dramatization of the movie, and it's just really great character development scenes that they have in there.
Yep, it's Jinza and Noriko. And she goes there to go to work, and she's on the train, and that's when Godzilla attacks again.
Yep.
And holy crap.
That scene, I think it is worth going to see this movie in theaters solely for that atomic breath scene. I loved the atomic breath scenes in the Hollywood Godzilla movies that have recently come out, and I think they've been really awesome and felt very powerful. But something about this one just felt like on another level almost. It was so it was like his tail slowly started lighting up and you knew it was happening, and the crunches every time his tail like turned blue sounded like painful almost, and then it like went to his mouth and it was like, it wasn't this long drawn out like it was like a shotgun blast, right? Like he did that thing and it was like boom, and all of a sudden it just like went dead silent until the explosion, which I just thought made it feel so, I don't know if it's more powerful than the other ones that we've seen, but it felt that way in the moment. Like, wow, that was insane. It
definitely seemed pretty powerful, and I was really blown away by that.
Yeah, so was Noriko.
Yeah, it felt like a mini nuke.
It did. I mean, it had the mushroom cloud in the distance too. Like it was basically a mini nuke.
Yeah, it was really scary. And I think the other reason it felt more intense is because I think in the MonsterVerse ones, when Godzilla lights up his atomic breath, you're like, yeah, like get him. Like,
yeah.
'cause he's fighting another monster. But here he's like killing people or
just destroying
you care
towns.
about. And I guess he wasn't launching it at people we care about. But the consequences of that were obviously really bad. And that whole section, he was super scary, and
pointing out really, he didn't actually start attacking anyone until the tanks started shooting him. So once again, he did not attack first here.
Yeah, he was just kind of strolling up,
Yeah, he's
Then the
just
tank
walking
got him.
up, and then they shot him with the tank, and he was like, oh, we fighting now. Takes out his freaking atomic breath. Also, one scene I found absolutely ridiculous was all of the news reporters on top of the building that were
I think it was supposed to be
narrating.
funny. I think it's supposed to be
It had
funny.
to be. There's no way that was like, I was like, what are you doing? Like, they're narrating as Godzilla's coming up to them and destroying the building that they're on. They're like, and now he's destroying the building. I was like, what are you doing? Get out of there. Just felt ridiculous. It was hilarious, though. I was laughing a lot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I thought it was really funny.
So Noriko, in that blast, though, obviously, like, she kind of gets swept away in the blast, and we assume at the time that she's dead, right? I mean, he assumes that for sure. They haven't found a body, and it looked like an impossible situation to survive.
Yeah, it definitely looked that way too. And it's one of those situations where it's like, I don't know if we really need the body to see it, because like there's no way she didn't die, right?
Yeah, she must have landed like in a mattress factory or something.
I think her surviving is something more to do with the nature of what Godzilla is, rather than she probably got close to dying. My theory is that she, maybe not just her, but like everyone that was hit had the chance to maybe take on some of his regenerative abilities. I'm not sure.
Wow, that would be a crazy. I love that. I love that conspiracy theory. I feel like that's literally the most realistic thing that you've said in the context of how she survived that.
I feel like it's the only way. I mean, maybe I can think of something else, but
I guess
the movie goes out of your way to show she gets tossed by the blast and then sucked back in on like the shockwave or whatever.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way. I didn't think there was any chance that she was still alive. That looked like the most definitive deaths I've seen. That was like, it wasn't like an off-screen death. That was like, I felt like she got vaporized by the heat of the atomic blast going back, you know, like.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I thought she was. That whole scene was really heartbreaking.
Oh my god, yeah. There was a lot of
really-
emotions in this movie, and that was a really big one. I was like heartbroken when that happened.
Yeah, I teared up a little bit. I mean, the attack scene itself, the spectacle of it was also really cool in that way, but it was also like very like stressful in a good way to watch. And I really enjoyed how they used the Godzilla theme here. The Godzilla theme's so good. You can
I
use it in
loved
different
when they
contexts.
used it in, they used it in a few scenes, and every time it came on, it felt perfectly placed. Like, you're like, yes, this is it. This is what you want to feel when he's walking through with that music.
Yeah, exactly. Because it can be triumphant and like kind of like the sort of heroic, but it can also have the other context. Like here, they didn't get to the drop. They just did the build up part.
Yeah.
And then they do the drop in a later part when they're trying to deal with Godzilla. But
Yeah.
that whole section was crazy. And
But-
the music was perfectly executed. The whole music in the whole movie, even aside from Godzilla's
Yeah.
theme, was really good. Like
Yeah.
I noticed how good it was.
Yes, same. It definitely enhanced the movie, and it really did a great job of making the happy times seem happy and the sad times seem sad and the stressful times seem stressful. Like, it really accentuated every part of the movie and just really flowed harmoniously with it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So then the main protagonist, I keep saying that his name is Kōichi, but he then decides like to have a bunch more resolve now, and he's like, okay, I am taking Godzilla out one way or the other. And he goes in league with his crewmates, and then he joins up with some other ex-military people, and they kind of create this plan to take down Godzilla. And
Yeah, I thought this plan was so cool.
yeah, I was so happy to see a plan that wasn't just let's shoot it or bigger guns. Like, they had, I feel like, a really creative solution to take out Godzilla that, like, I feel like you don't always get that. Like, a lot of times you just get, oh, let's beat him up harder. But no, this was like a really innovative thing that I feel like I've never seen something like that before.
Yeah, and I have no idea if the physics of this actually works, but I thought it was really, really interesting. I think in the original film they used something called the oxygen destroyer, which is basically just like a special bomb.
Interesting.
It's not something that has like grounded in reality. It's also not
Yeah.
something that, in the circumstances of this movie, that they would have been able to do.
Yeah, from my limited understanding of physics, something like that could theoretically work. I think there may have been some liberties taken with the speed at which you can do all that and everything, but I think it's pretty much physically sound. So if someone wants to correct me on that in the comments, feel free. But I think in my head that is legitimate.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'm sure there'll be a YouTube video.
Breaking down the physics of Godzilla.
So I thought that whole plan that they come up with is really inspiring, and the Doctor character, he might be my favorite character in the movie.
He's my favorite character, I think. I think that's safe to say. He was so much fun.
I think a big point in that whole meeting was, a lot of them like, I don't want to die for this.
Yeah.
Like no one's helping us. And he makes a point that, we're not going to sacrifice anybody. We're doing this to live and continue, for us to continue too, not just everybody else. We're not sacrificing ourselves.
And I think that's a tough mindset to get out of after World War II, where you literally felt like the government was throwing lives away for this effort, just with no regard to anybody's personal safety.
Yeah, and they make a point of like giving other examples of like food supply lines and stuff like that. And I don't know how like historically accurate that is or isn't. It seemed real, but I thought that was really interesting and a really cool approach, and that really like sells like a big part of the film is that you fight to live, you don't fight.
Yeah, you don't fight to kill or die, you fight to live, which makes a lot of sense. So and then Kōichi then decides that he's gonna have his own secret plan with the mechanic to do, a little suicide run and try to redeem some of the honor that he feels like he lost and the life that he feels like he doesn't deserve at this time.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that he had the mechanic from the island to work on the ship.
It definitely brought it around in a nice, in a satisfying manner, especially one where obviously at the end it's revealed that the mechanic built him a ejection seat so that he's like, hey, for all intents and purposes, I'm somewhat forgiving you, or at least I want you to do better in life than you had previously, and I don't want you to die.
Yeah, he does wait to make sure that he has the conviction to do this, and then he says, okay, here's the ejection.
Yep.
I'm really glad that twist happened. I think by then I'd known that was probably going to happen.
Yeah, I had a suspicion of that as well. By that time, I'm like, that's got to be the ejection that he's pointing to, that they kind of panned out on when he's like, oh yeah, and then there's, whatever. I think it speaks a lot, and it's such a heavy subject to think about it, like, how the kamikaze pilots' lives and things, and how they're viewed as like they're supposed to die. It's a heavy topic.
That's a wild concept, and I really like that the movie just makes a total rejection of that. And we needed to fight with a purpose and not just treat life so haphazardly. And I really, really, really enjoyed that.
Yep, me as well. So anyway, they requisition some old ships that are going to be sent back to the United States because after the war, their military was demilitarized and they weren't allowed to have it. So on the way back, but the citizens were able to just commandeer those for this effort to take down Godzilla. And they had just a great scene where basically everything seemed to go pretty much to plan, at least at the beginning, because Kōichi flew in and he was taken out, just kind of antagonizing Godzilla, trying to draw him into the trap. And I thought that was really funny because he was in the middle of a field and there was like probably like 100 square miles of green grass and one house in the middle, and he steps directly on it. I was like, come on, there's literally one house on this whole island and you step directly on it.
Yeah, Godzilla was very angry after getting the bomb dropped on him.
He was not a happy camper by any means. But anyway, they lure him into the ocean and they're able to go through with their plan. And I think that does actually do a lot of damage to Godzilla. I mean, he seems pretty messed up, after they drop him and then pull him back up.
Yeah, basically the whole pressure thing seemed to like slow down his regeneration.
Yeah.
But his metabolism, because he like kind of froze over and everything too.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then he flies into it. You maybe think that he's gonna kill himself. That they cut back and they showed him the ejection button and he ejects and he just blows up Godzilla's mouth.
Yeah, which is super fun because then like Godzilla was about to atomic blast when he got blown up in the face, so there was nowhere for the blast to go and it like blew up his body. And I thought that was really cool because really it was Godzilla that quote unquote killed himself there, because the atomic blast like just started like leaking out of the rest of his body because it had nowhere else to go, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I thought that too. I like that one guy that they sort of like know, like, not seeing war is a good thing. Like
Yeah.
Like, it's not something that you need to be proud of. And I really like that message too. Just total rejection of like the honor and like of war as a concept. I feel like sometimes when you make these things sound like
you romanticize them.
Yeah, exactly. You're romanticizing this concept when really war is horrible. We know we should avoid it as much as possible. And I really like that movie. Really hammered that home, and it's really poignant coming from the perspective of the Japanese after World War II and what they did in World War II, and then what happened to them in World War II. Really poignant. Really well done. And then they succeed, at least temporarily.
And he makes it back, and he goes back to his house or whatever, where he had kind of relegated his daughter to go live with his friend forever. And then we saw a little earlier, I guess, in the scene where she got a telegram, and we were like, oh crap, what could that possibly have been? And obviously, by that time, I think I had figured out like that was it's probably a telegram telling him that she's alive. So we see him run into the hospital and reunite with Noriko.
I did not know what the telegram was for. I was actually surprised to see that she was still alive. I had no idea.
I didn't know at first. I was pretty confident after he got back from trying to.
After that,
when he got back, and then she was like, what the hell, man? You just ran off and almost killed yourself or whatever. And then I was like, oh, I know. And she's especially mad because, Noriko's actually alive or whatever. So I knew before he went to the hospital or left or whatever. I was glad to see that she was alive and I guess missing an eye. But, that's a lot better than I thought she was doing.
Absolutely. And I had thought that. So when we first saw the telegram, I thought that it was to tell her that like he left something so that she would be notified that he had passed away fighting Godzilla or something. That's what I thought. And then he shows back up, obviously, and then we find out, that she's alive somehow. But they do zoom in on her neck. That's kind of like that black. I don't know if it's like on her skin. It looks like it's like her veins.
Oh yeah.
That's why.
Interesting. So you think that there's something in there, or like some sort of remnant of the actual atomic blast?
Yeah, I think something about whatever Godzilla's powers were, especially if the nuclear blast that the American government dropped on Godzilla had something to do with his power right now, that maybe that's something that's sort of spreadable.
Interesting.
The way that it looked, it almost seems like parasitic, but I don't know if that's what they were going for, if it's just to show something happened to her.
Or it could have been like a burn or something from... And that's interesting. I didn't notice that. I'll have to go back and look at that and see.
No, it's definitely like moving in her neck. So like it's
I definitely didn't notice that. I'll definitely have to go back and look at that.
So yeah, I thought that was really... So that's kind of where my theory is coming from, that somehow this regeneration ability was transferred to her, or something else entirely that we're not thinking of.
But definitely.
That's my current theory, and I do think this movie should get a sequel. I don't know how they do it. But
I think. I mean, obviously, we saw at the end of the movie or whatever him slowly regenerating underwater. It's like he's bubbling or whatever, and it looks like he's slowly starting to come back. I would imagine that it'll take him a while to regenerate fully. I would think that it won't be quite as fast as like when his face was blown up and he instantly regenerated. I feel like it was trying to show that it's going to take him a while to recover from that one.
Yeah, and so he's like Cell, you have to destroy the core completely, otherwise it can regenerate.
Yeah. So do you think if there's a sequel, do you think it's going to be people versus Godzilla again, or do you think we're gonna get another monster in there, like Mecha Godzilla or one of the other kind of like bug looking things?
I'm not sure. So I think there's like two ways that they could do this, and maybe someone more creative than me can think of other things, but so the way I see it, it's gonna go one of two ways. One, there's gonna be another monster. I think they'll try to retain the same tone, and Godzilla will still not be like nice, but might be sort of like the best of a bad situation, the lesser evil in the circumstance, I guess, but still not like friendly. Or they'll age the characters up, and I think the director mentioned he'd want to use the same characters, but I could see the daughter being the POV character, the primary protagonist.
Yeah, I think it should be aged up a bit. I think that's a great idea if it was the daughter that's the new POV for the next movie. I think that would be super interesting, and I think that would be a good amount of time, like if it's like 20 years later or something.
100%. And if they only wanted to have Godzilla and kind of retain the purity of what he was in this movie, then they could take that approach and kind of go like the generational trauma, where sort of Godzilla's sort of the manifestation of trauma that's passed down from her parents to her, and then, you know, onward it goes.
Yeah.
So that could be really interesting. So that's kind of the one of the two ways I see it. I'm not really sure. I guess we shall see. It could also be like, they could do so many things with it. I feel like the ending is hinting towards at least what I thought I saw in her neck. You'll have to let me know when you look at it again. That's going to be a big point for the next one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I would definitely think if there's something in her neck, that would be a big plot point in the next movie. It's like I almost don't even want a sequel because I feel like this one ended on such a good note.
I know, so good. And even if they hadn't shown Godzilla regenerating, I would have thought that
like this was it. I agree. Overall, I mean, I loved the movie. I thought all of the characters were great, super believable, and just really fun, entertaining movie all around.
Yep, totally agree. I loved it. Highly recommend. I think even if you don't like this type of genre typically,
give it a try, I would say, because it's worth it just for the character piece and not even the monster piece. I don't even think you need to be a fan of like monster movies to really appreciate this movie.
Absolutely. And I think you'll probably get more out of it if you like Godzilla, but it's not like necessary.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's gonna wrap it up unless you had anything else you wanted to touch on.
No, I mean, I could touch on like any one topic for like a whole podcast episode. I had to stop myself a few times there. Other than that, no, I mean, it's just really fantastic. So
perfect. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for us. So we want to know, what did you guys think of Godzilla? Let us know down in the comments. Do you think there is going to be a sequel? What do you think is going to be in the sequel? I'm Keegs, and I will catch you all next time for some more Godzilla content.